I'm Michael Pergola, and we're here in New Lebanon, New York, right at the edge of the Taconic Ridge and the beautiful Berkshires. And we are at the inn at Shaker Mill Falls. The beautiful falls that punctuates the landscape really is what takes my heart most powerfully. I've become the steward and proprietor of this beautiful place with the intent of creating an incubator of planet-friendly cooperative enterprises that provide the opportunity for people of all ages, but in particular for emerging adults, to find meaningful work where they can earn a living and make a life that matters and contributes back to the health and well-being of the planet, the food system, and of all of us who live on this, our only home.
Tell us the history of the inn at Shaker Mill Falls, and who built it, and who are the Shakers?
The building was originally built in 1824, all with local stone that came from the region immediately surrounding the inn. But it wasn't an inn then, it was a grist mill. The Shakers were the longest lived utopian community in the United States, existing for close to 200 years. And they're a unique community whose motto was hands to work and hearts to God. And they did a great many practical innovations that really were dedicated to the good of all. They were respected and never attacked by the Native Americans. They integrated women and blacks into the community from a very early stage when that was unheard of. And they were known both for their kindness, their sense of design and beauty, and their capacity to be effective in the world, living out their spiritual aspirations in many, many profound ways. I think it's important to say that they're sometimes misunderstood because of their focus on celibacy. But that came from Mother Anne, who founded the Shakers and left England after seeing how women and children were massively mistreated by the aristocratic men in particular, and having lost 4 children of her own. And her focus was, how can we live the deeper principles that she was on fire with in ways that treated all people fairly and nurtured children in ways that they would become loving. And so her focus on celibacy really led to tremendous sublimation of that energy into good for so many people. And at the time, she didn't really understand much about birth control or other issues. So it was a way that was a healthy approach to sexuality for some at a very difficult time for the treatment of women and children.
How did they put their spiritual ideas into practice?
Well, they did that by really focusing on what they could do that would serve not only their community, but the surrounding communities and the planet itself. This was the grist mill for the largest Shaker communities in the United States, of which there are 2 beautiful museums, the Mount Lebanon Shaker Museum and the Hancock Shaker Village, within 10 minutes of the inn at Shaker Mill Falls. And they worked together in cooperative ways. They nurtured their spirituality through dance and ritual and meeting, and sometimes would dance all night, hence the name Shakers, because the dance would lead into ecstatic trance. But then they would translate into practical action. They treated the land in ways that were healthy and kept the land alive and full of the capacity to grow delicious, healthy food. They invented the circular saw, the push broom, the new generation of the water wheel, which was actually the turbine. And that was part of what they used here to power the mill, which is why they built the mill here at this beautiful place. And they were renowned for their sense of design, the beauty of their furniture, and their wooden boxes in particular.
What is integrative permaculture?
Well, I think the notion of integrative permaculture really has a lot of resonance with the Shaker history on this land. Permaculture is a design science, originally applied to agriculture, but having relevance in social permaculture and in many different areas of life. It's based on 3 ethics: earth care, people care, and fair share. And that really sums up how we need to learn to relate to each other and to the planet at this important time in human history, when so much is changing, and the way we've treated the earth since the discovery of fossil fuel really creates some difficult challenges for the future. So I think the idea of integrative permaculture is to bring the 12 principles which derive from the ethics to bear in many ways, and in particular to integrate multiple sources of knowledge, because each perspective has a point of view that's valuable, but in this realm at least, pretty much no perspective has all the truth. So if we can integrate different ways of treating the land, different approaches to agriculture, different approaches to generate economic wherewithal in order to fund progressive industries and put young people to work, and if we can educate them to learn these principles and these approaches, then we can contribute to healthy food, to more vibrant individuals because they're eating better, to social justice, to better profits for farmers because we go beyond the farm gate, integrating across the entire range of the food system from soil to table, and ultimately resequestering carbon and making a contribution back to the earth from which we've taken so much since the Industrial Revolution. Some people call Whole Foods whole paycheck because, while what it does is very important as being a leader in providing healthy food to people who can afford it, it's really an upper middle class phenomenon. And many people can't afford organic food. And it's almost a funny term because if we went back 50 years, food was food. It was all organic. And it's only since World War II that we've had these increasing uses of pesticides and herbicides and antibiotics infecting the food system and affecting our health and well-being. So I think it's very important that we focus on the needs of farmers, which was the original purpose of the farm subsidy program, which unfortunately for years did a good thing, but unfortunately today is subsidizing GMO and chemically laden soy and corn, rather than supporting small and medium-sized farmers to stay on the land and grow healthy food, which was its intention during the New Deal. So we need to rewrite the farm bills, which is going to take some effort given the current political circumstances. But we also need to focus on a food system and not just on food at the farm gate, because there's not enough profit there. So if we can integrate in the spirit of some of the European cooperatives by creating value-added products from the food and creating distribution channels and end-user ways of getting the food, both through direct distribution to the retail customer, but also through restaurants and other kinds of cafes on places like college campuses, then we can put more people to work. We can capture profits across the food chain. We can build a high-level brand that has a premium pricing, just as Lexus has a premium pricing, but Toyota's are very similar to Lexus. And then package things differently so that we can focus on the very important social justice issues and the question of food deserts in so many of our communities, so that people with talent, but without the opportunity for good food, can be better nourished, therefore do better in school, and therefore make a larger contribution to our society and to the future of the earth.
How does integrative permaculture relate to the cooperative movement, and why is this important?
I had the good fortune to be the chief knowledge officer for risk at one of the largest banks in the country early in the 2000s. And before that, practiced law at one of the finest law firms in Washington, D.C. And that gave me the opportunity to learn up close some of what I learned theoretically in my graduate studies and law studies. And so I saw the structure of what best can be described as global financial capitalism, and how it is focused so powerfully on short-term profits and on benefiting what some people have called the in-group, the oligarchy that is at the center of control and corporate hierarchy. And what I saw was many good people pulled by the American ethos of achievement and by the sense of the rules of the game, so to speak, do things that they themselves questioned and that clearly were in the long-term negative interest of the people of the planet Earth. And so I wondered, what can we do to make a difference? And I met a wonderful man named John McMillan, who in his 80s now spent his life feeding people around the world, who learned that you could build economies around sustainable and regenerative food systems, And having grown up in a large Italian family, I've always loved food and have cooked since I was 3 years old. And so it struck me that the food system was a place where we could focus on building cooperative enterprises, because so many people want to work in the food system, and at least 25, if not 40%, of the carbon emitted has relationship to the food system in one form or another. So growing healthy food, growing the right kind of grasses, the right kind of crops, and treating the land properly will resequester enormous amounts of carbon. But therein lies the rub. There's enormous numbers of young people wanting to work on the land in these organic and sustainable and regenerative agricultural endeavors, but they don't always have the proper education. They don't always understand all the different things that are possible and have access to the knowledge. And most important is they frequently don't have access to land because too many progressive movements are undercapitalized. So in my studies and my thinking, it struck me that if we could integrate across the food supply chain from soil to table, and if we could provide the right economic structures and the right kind of education and the right kind of enterprise development, then that could be ecologically friendly and highly profitable. And so the cooperative enterprises such as Mondragon give us an example of what's possible when we work together, both for our own well-being and for the greater good of the planet. It's completely in alignment with the Shaker philosophy and the tangible ways the Shakers related to each other in the land. And I think creating cooperatives that honor the commons, that honor the ecological resources that so many companies take advantage of but don't have a price for. And so we overuse the atmosphere, for instance, to the point where we're destroying it. So I think a cooperative orientation and an economic structure that takes from those cooperative movements and incorporates them into a uniquely American approach to cooperative entrepreneurship. That is, cooperative entrepreneurship, which takes the next step beyond social entrepreneurship, I think may play an important role in creating a future that works, in resequestering carbon, and in hopefully addressing some of the tremendous issues we face because of the emission of fossil fuels. So we need ways to work together, to honor the commons, and to move beyond short-term profits so that we can benefit both ourselves, other people, the earth, and the future of all species who live on this beautiful planet.
How does the work of integrated permaculture relate to the Good Work Institute?
The Good Work Institute really grew out of Etsy, the novel online marketplace for artists and artisans. And Matt Stinchcomb, one of the original members of the Etsy team, formed a foundation, so to speak, when Etsy went public. And that's become the Good Work Institute, really building on Wendell Berry's understanding that it's no longer sufficient for us on planet Earth to do less bad. In order to regenerate the Earth and create an environment that will be healthy for future generations, we need to begin to do good work, and we need to do that together. So the Good Work Institute is a wonderful leadership development program, an incubator supporting cooperative enterprises, and a set of interconnected local and regional economies across the Hudson River Valley. The vision of the Good Work Institute is to really create an alternative to the current destructive forms of economic activity in the United States, and to use the Hudson River, really the birthplace of the American economy, as a model for that. They've sponsored a number of cohorts with more to come, and the work is really dynamic and engaging and important. And I've been privileged enough to be a part of that. And integrative permaculture is in many ways an example of exactly what the Good Work Institute is trying to do. So there is a direct relationship between the larger vision that the Good Work Institute has and the very specific way in which integrative permaculture is putting that into practice here in the area near Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and Albany, New York, and all the way down the river to New York City and out east to Boston. So we are an example of exactly what the Good Work Institute is trying to promote, and we're lucky enough to learn with each other, to work together, and to really create a future that will work for us all in a way that provides healthy food and good work for people of all ages, and contributes to the future of a planet that is so much in need.